sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, let's dive into this whole Guantanamo Bay thing. We've got these articles from Fox News, and it's pretty intense stuff. So get ready, folks. This is going to be a deep dive.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way these articles are written, it's not just reporting the news. It feels like they're trying to shape a narrative.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with how they keep using the phrase criminal illegal aliens. It's like loaded language, right?
Definitely. And it's interesting because they say Trump's planning to send 30,000 of these criminal illegal aliens to Guantanamo. And then they mentioned that the facility has, get this, 30,000 beds.
Whoa, hold on, 30,000 beds. Are they really trying to say that's just a coincidence?
It makes you wonder, right, what message are they really sending here? Like, is this about efficiently managing immigration, or is it more about creating this sense of fear? They even talk about a drop in migrant encounters under the new Trump policies, yet they're still pushing this narrative of a massive influx of criminal individuals.
It's like they're trying to justify this drastic measure. But there's another thing. The article also mentions that Guantanamo already houses some immigrants, mostly those considered high risk. So it's not like this is totally unprecedented.
That's right. And we have to remember that using Guantanamo for immigration detention has a history. The Bush and Clinton administrations, they both used it to house Haitian and Cuban migrants back in the 90s.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it went back that far.
Yeah, but the legal and ethical landscape was different then.
In what way? I mean, were people less concerned about human rights back then?
Well, not necessarily. But the laws around detention and asylum have changed since the 90s. And the way we view Guantanamo has also changed, especially after its connection to the war on terror.
That's true. It's not just about the physical place anymore. It's about what it symbolizes.
Exactly. Sending migrants there now carries a much heavier weight.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So the article then goes on to highlight specific cases, like 969 arrests in a single day. And they even included social media posts showing people with serious criminal records. Why focus on these individual stories, you think?
Well, it feels like a classic example of using anecdotal evidence to create a larger story, By showcasing these extreme examples, they're trying to paint this picture that all migrants are dangerous criminals, even though these cases might not be representative of the whole migrant population.
Right. It seems like they're playing on people's emotions, trying to stoke fear and justify harsher policies. But the article also mentions that Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel condemned the plan, calling it an act of brutality.
Yeah, that reaction is important for a couple of reasons. First, it shows how this plan could damage U.S.-Cuba relations, which have been getting better in recent years. And second, it speaks to the wider international concern about using Guantanamo this way.
That's a really good point. And it's not just condemnation either. The article also mentions that some people actually support the plan, like Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. They both said Guantanamo is suitable for this and pointed to its history.
Right, and I think it's important to look at why they're endorsing this. Is it just logistics, or is it more political? We need to consider what their agendas might be and how that's shaping the narrative.
Yeah, it's like everyone's playing their part in this bigger political game. And it's all happening while Trump's making these sweeping changes to immigration policy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he enacted 10 executive orders in his first week back in office.
Oh, yeah. Those executive orders are crucial to understanding the context. They represent a much tougher stance on immigration, with policies aimed at basically shutting down the asylum system and increasing deportations.
And the article even says that over 7,300, they call them illegal aliens, have already been removed and sent back in the week since Trump's inauguration.
That number shows how quickly these policy changes are happening. It's clear this administration is moving aggressively to get their agenda in place. The question is, what will the long-term effects of this approach be? And how does this Guantanamo plan fit into their overall strategy?
It seems like they're pushing hard for big changes and fast. But with something as complex and sensitive as immigration, is speed always the best way to go?
Well, yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Speed and immigration, they don't always go together so well, especially when we're talking about a place like Guantanamo.
It's true. I was just thinking about that, how using Guantanamo just adds another layer of complexity to everything.
It's not just another detention facility. Guantanamo has so much symbolism, the controversial history, it comes with a lot of baggage.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it during the war on terror, but honestly, I don't really know the full story. Can you give us a little more background on Guantanamo?
Sure. So Guantanamo Bay has been a U.S. naval base since the early 1900s. But it really became known as a detention facility after 9/11. That's when it became the main place to hold people suspected of terrorism, often without a trial or even clear legal processes.
So it already had this reputation for being outside the normal justice system.
Exactly. And that's what makes using it for immigration detention so problematic. It blurs the lines between criminal justice and immigration policy. It raises these serious questions about how these migrants will be treated, what legal rights they'll have, and how long they'll be held there.
It's like we're stepping onto this really slippery slope. If we're sending migrants to Guantanamo, are we saying they're the same as terrorists?
That's a very valid concern. Using a facility that's so connected to terrorism, well, it's easy to see how it could hurt the public's perception of migrants. It plays into this narrative of fear and otherness. And that makes it easier to justify harsh policies.
And what about Guantanamo itself? I mean, haven't people been trying to close it for years?
Absolutely. Many human rights groups, legal experts, even politicians have argued for Guantanamo to be shut down. They see it as a symbol of a failed approach to fighting terrorism, a stain on America's reputation.
So using it for migrant detention would kind of go against those efforts.
Exactly. It gives new life to a facility that many believe should be history. It also raises the concern that Guantanamo could become a permanent solution for dealing with anyone we don't want, whether they're accused terrorists or migrants seeking asylum.
Okay, this is starting to feel much bigger than just immigration policy. What are the potential consequences of this? Not just for the migrants, but for everyone.
Well, this situation really forces us to ask, what are our values as a nation? How committed are we to human rights? If we allow the government to detain migrants indefinitely, without due process, just because of their immigration status, what's to stop them from doing the same to other groups?
That's a scary thought. So it's not just about protecting the rights of migrants, it's about protecting everyone's rights.
Exactly. It's about upholding due process, equal protection under the law, the fundamental right to liberty. These principles are the foundation of a just and democratic society.
And by using Guantanamo this way, are we risking those principles?
That's the worry. It sets a dangerous precedent. It normalizes indefinite detention without a trial. And we've seen throughout history, when governments start chipping away at fundamental rights, it rarely ends well.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides, but are there any possible benefits to using Guantanamo for this? I mean, the article did mention it has 30,000 beds ready to go.
The argument for using Guantanamo usually comes down to logistics. It's secure, and it already has the infrastructure for detention. But I think those logistical benefits are totally outweighed by the ethical and legal concerns.
So even if it makes sense logistically, it might not be the right thing to do in the long run.
Exactly. We have to think of the long-term consequences of this decision, not just the immediate benefits. And in this case, I think the potential harm is much greater than any perceived benefits.
This is a lot to take in. It feels like we're at a crossroads, and the choices we make now will have consequences for years to come.
I agree. And it's not just up to policymakers to make those choices. We, as citizens, have a role to play in shaping the direction of our nation.
So what can we do? How can we make our voices heard?
Well, first, we have to stay informed. Learn about the complexities of immigration policy, the history of Guantanamo, and the potential consequences of this decision.
And then what? Just sit around and be informed?
No, not at all. We need to talk to people, have meaningful conversations with our friends, family, and communities, share what we've learned, challenge assumptions, and encourage critical thinking.
So it's about starting a dialogue, raising awareness, getting people to think critically about this.
Exactly. We can also reach out to our elected officials, express our concerns, and demand accountability. We can support organizations working to protect migrant rights and advocate for humane immigration policies.
So it's about taking action, not just talking.
Right. It's about using our voices and actions to create the kind of society we want to live in. A society that upholds human rights, respects the rule of law, and treats everyone with dignity and compassion.
Okay, that's inspiring. It makes me feel like we can actually make a difference. But honestly, this whole situation also makes me a little uneasy. Like, what if this is just the beginning?
I understand that feeling. This is unsettling because it raises these fundamental questions about who we are as a nation, what do we stand for?
And things are changing so fast. What other potential outcomes should we be thinking about? What are some of the scenarios that could happen from here?
Well, one possibility is that this plan faces legal challenges. Human rights groups and legal experts are already getting ready to fight this. It's very possible this will end up in court.
That makes sense. What about the international community? How are other countries going to react to this?
We've already heard condemnation from Cuba, and it's likely other countries, especially those with strong human rights records, will do the same. There could be diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, maybe even damage to the U.S.'s reputation on the world stage.
So this could have consequences far beyond our borders.
Absolutely. And then there's the political situation here at home. Public opinion on immigration is so divided. This issue could create even more polarization.
It feels like this is just the start of a long and difficult fight.
It very well could be, but it's also a chance for a conversation that we really need to have about who we are as a nation and what we stand for.
A conversation about our values, our priorities, the kind of future we want to build.
Exactly. And that's a conversation that we all need to be a part of.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. I feel like I understand the situation much better now, but I also feel this sense of urgency, like we need to do something.
I think that's a natural and appropriate response. This is a critical moment, and the decisions we make now will have lasting effects.
So what can we do? Where do we go from here?
First, keep learning. Don't let this conversation end here. Research different viewpoints, challenge your own assumptions, find reliable sources of information.
And then, how do we turn that knowledge into action?
Talk to people. Share what you've learned with your friends, family, colleagues, anyone who will listen. Start those tough conversations. Challenge the narratives that dehumanize migrants. Advocate for a more compassionate and just approach to immigration.
So raise awareness, start a dialogue, push for change.
Exactly. Contact your elected officials, support organizations working on these issues, use your voice to demand accountability. Remember, we're the citizens. We have the power to shape our nation's future.
This has been a heavy deep dive, but incredibly important. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this complex issue, but hopefully we've given our listeners something to think about and a feeling that they can do something.
I agree. The situation is complicated, but it's not hopeless. By having these conversations, by demanding better from our leaders, and by working together, we can create a future where human rights are respected and everyone has a chance to thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll keep learning about this issue and use your voice to make a difference.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what